All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you all very much for attending today's pre-law shadow session. We have a very special treat today as we have four guest speakers with us. We have Michelle, Karlena, Alex, and Anthony, who all attend the Lincoln Alexander School of Law here in Toronto. So without further ado, I will let each of them introduce themselves. So you guys have the floor.
Who wants to go first?
Whoever wants to go first.
Do you want to go by first initial of name?
Sure, yeah, let's do it that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, does L come for it?
Yeah.
It's not a good start. Okay. Hi everybody. My name's Alex, and I am a second-year student at the Lincoln Alexander School of Law. I'm going into my second year. I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Windsor, and I did it in human kinetics, which is kinesiology to most. Do I say something like, what do I do in my free time, or?
Sure, yeah, fun fact, why not?
Fun fact about me, I've been a competitive trampoline gymnast for over 12 years. It's the one thing I'm most passionate about. I had to hang up the trampoline shoes to go to law school, but it's the one thing that I will tell people at parties. I can do trampoline. You guys want to see me do a flip? That's the thing I tell people. Pass it over to Anthony.
Hi, everyone. My name's Anthony. I'm going into my second year as well. My undergraduate degree was in specialized international studies degree with a bilingual degree in French from Glendon College, York University. My fun fact is that I really love cooking. We make homemade sausages, we do homemade wine, we make homemade hot sauce. It's what I do to find relaxing moments as well as to spend time with family and friends.
His hot sauce is divine. I've tried it.
Well, if we're sticking with alphabetical order, then I'm next. So my name's Karlena. I did my undergrad at Carleton University. I studied global and international studies with a concentration in global law and social justice. I'm also entering my second year at Lincoln Alexander School of Law. And my fun fact, I mean, it's not super fun, but I'm in British Columbia, and I grew up here and then moved out to Ontario for school. So if you have any questions about kind of the change from moving out to Ontario, if you're from out of province, feel free to ask.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle. I'm also going into my second year now at the Lincoln Alexander School of Law. I did my undergraduate degree at York University and I studied psychology. And a fun fact about me is that I was a lifeguard and swim instructor for 5 years before law school.
I love it. So welcome, guys. Thank you very much again for taking the time to be here. So I guess we'll just dive in. So all of you go to the Lincoln Alexander School of Law, and I know it's fairly new, actually, pretty brand new. My first question for everyone here is, what made you guys choose the Lincoln Alexander School of Law?
Should we go alphabetical again?
Yeah, let's do that again.
Okay. I'll be honest, it was the only school I was accepted to. I'll put it right out there. Although I wasn't going to choose it if I had been accepted elsewhere, just because I'm from Windsor. I wanted to stay home. And then I really got to know the program. After Ryerson accepted me, I got to know the program a little bit. And the one thing that really drew me towards Ryerson, which kind of solidified my decision regardless of whether I would have been accepted anywhere else, is the IPC. I thought that was really interesting. And the only other law school that currently does it is Lakehead. So I think it was really interesting that they were bringing that initiative to Toronto. And it meant that we didn't have to article. We can article, but we don't have to. So that was the one thing that really drew me towards Ryerson. And I'm really happy that I stuck with the only school that accepted me. That sounds so, oh well. I'm really happy with my decision regardless.
So the reason why I chose Lincoln Alexander was because at the time I was mostly going for American schools, and I was looking at predominantly just American schools or doing a dual degree. So that was Ottawa or either Windsor. And for myself, I think it was both financial incentives as well as the option of avoiding a fourth year of doing articling. Nowadays, it looks like there's a potentiality that I have to do it nonetheless, but I think it was a very inviting invitation. I also appreciated the diversity and inclusion at Ryerson that made it feel very understanding, very welcoming. As well as a York University student, I was in Toronto a lot and I loved the campus to begin with. And so I think all those factors included just really drew me to the program. Yeah, I just was drawn to the program, with its professors, incentives on financial, as well as the overall atmosphere was, I think, stood out to me as being different from other law schools. And that's something I valued and I wanted to continue, especially considering that Ryerson University is very well known and renowned for their research and capabilities.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony and Alex. So I decided to go to Ryerson University mainly because of their emphasis on social justice related issues. I have a big heart for social justice and human rights. That's what I want to go into after I finish law school. And they're one of the few law schools in Canada that was really emphasizing access to justice, which to me is one of the largest issues in Canada right now. So I just was really excited to go to a law school that felt as deeply about those issues as I do. So that was kind of the biggest reason why I chose Ryerson. But why I chose it over some of the other law schools I got into was the location. Obviously, Toronto is a very inviting city to live. Unfortunately, the last year we've had a pandemic, but I'm really excited for things to open back up again in the fall and to enjoy living in a big city. So that's been wonderful as well.
So the reason why I chose Ryerson or Lincoln Alexander School of Law is I met Andre. So he's our current director of the Career and Professional Development Placement Office. Alex will research, so she'll know more about it. But I met him and he basically told me that like the reason why Ryerson was so unique was because they were approaching law school with like a different like way. It was like a new kind of lawyer they were trying to create, and the entire program was going to be different. So typically when you go to law school, there's a lot of theory, a lot of reading, but they were going to do it differently in the sense where you're going to have like hands-on assignments, be taught by practitioners in like small classrooms, and actually like do the work that a lawyer would do during law school. So I thought that was really unique, and I felt like that would kind of put Ryerson students ahead. So it really appealed to me. So I like that component. I also really like the access to justice. Similar to Karlena, I also am very interested in social justice and access to justice. So I really like that part too. And I'm so happy to be here. Everyone's really great in the program. So I feel like we're very lucky with our group of students.
That's wonderful. And I mean, you guys have me sold, so I really appreciate it. The next question I have for you guys, obviously, so sorry for everybody. What kind of made like everyone choose law school? Like, was anyone thinking of taking a master's or going right into the career? What made everyone sort of like go to law school or choose to go to law school? Was it something that you all had beliefs that you wanted to go prior to, let's say, undergrad, or going through undergrad you knew you wanted to go to, or was it something that kind of fell into your lap and you kind of said, let's roll with this?
So law school wasn't always what I wanted to do, or it wasn't always what I knew I wanted to do. My undergrad is in kinesiology, so it was very unlikely that you choose a route like law school from an undergrad such as that one. Most of my friends were off to physio school or chiropractic school or even med school. But throughout my undergrad, and I guess before that in high school, I knew that my strengths were in writing and also speaking. I knew that I could always excel in writing and researching and speaking. And I knew that those are very large components for being successful in law school. And I also knew that I wanted to help people in some capacity. I didn't know what capacity, but I guess it started with sort of building on what I was good at, and then really acknowledging that law might fit the things that I'm good at. So honestly, I just decided to give it a shot. I didn't know what I was really getting myself into. I could have hated it, but I don't. But I wanted to take a chance. You know, it ticked off all my boxes, and I wanted to go for it. So I did, and I've loved every step of the way.
I think the reason why I really chose law school was a conversation with a professor who was both a lawyer and then a professor of human rights as well as refugee law. And it was one of our few bilingual classes at campus. And after a conversation with him about masters and law degrees, and choosing a path, he really like had a conversation about utility as well as profession, and skills. And I thought that, um, being able to go into a market where I would have specific skills that are a specific set of abilities and rights, and you can do a lot more things, and still then do a master's. And there's a lot of people that are students in Ryerson, in the Lincoln Alexander School of Law class, that have masters already and then are doing law school right now. So I thought that I would do law school first. Um, and then I think in a couple years time, I'd like to do a master's. And that's like kind of my goal, to eventually then do that and choose something that was specifically from my undergrad and reinvigorate that. But I know that with a law degree, I can do things that are similar to a master's, such as like JD Advantage jobs, or specifically be a lawyer, or do advising and consulting, as well as the possibilities to travel afterwards and travel and work in other countries is a lot more broad. And you have more of a direct route in comparison to other degrees. So yeah, that's my reasoning of why I went to law school.
Yeah, so very similar to what Alex and Anthony said. I've wanted to go into law for a long time, mainly because I want to help people. Law is a site of a lot of inequality. A lot of people don't have access to the law, either because of the financial constraints or just not being able to read and understand like legalese. It's something that governs all of us, but not all of us have equal opportunity to be able to advocate for ourselves under the law. And I really want to go to law school so I would have that knowledge to be able to help those people who don't have the same access. And similar to what Anthony was saying, I'm also very interested in pursuing a master's sometime down the road, and to look into more legal research and things like that. And a lot of LLM programs in Canada require you to have a JD before you're able to do them. So that's one of the big reasons why I decided to go to law school first rather than pursue a master's first, because I'm very interested in that LLM. So yeah, and off to Michelle.
Thank you. For me, like, I guess I always wanted to go to law school since I was little. Like, I can't even remember exactly when that started, when I decided I wanted to go, but it mainly was for similar reasons to Karlena, where like I saw there was a lot of access to justice issues, people not really understanding the law, not being able to afford lawyers, and then consequently falling victim to the criminal justice system in many cases in terms of criminal law, but even within various fields of law. So I saw lawyers as like basically somebody who could help others, and that was my goal with whatever career I wanted to pursue. Ultimately, I want to help people. So that's why I was like, if a lawyer can do it and they can make a really big difference in people's lives, like this is what I want to do. And from then on, I was very determined to go to law school. And yeah, and I guess it all like worked out in the end.
Yeah, it sounds like everyone worked out at the end. Obviously, attending such a high prestigious school and just being able to have that status of being a student in law school. And I mean, I think you're all doing it for the right reasons as well. So it sounds like things are going to pay off, hopefully. So my next question kind of delves into a little bit into I guess a little bit before law school, I guess. So obviously attending law school in Ontario, everyone here was subject to having to write the LSAT. So could each of you maybe speak a little bit about your experience, both studying and writing writing the LSAT?
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay, my mom decided to have a karaoke party downstairs, so I had to put headphones in. The LSAT, yes. Wow. Seems like such a long time ago. I studied for the LSAT for about 4 months, 3 to 4 months. It was hefty. They do say that studying for the LSAT is kind of like a 9-to-5 job. I wouldn't look at it exactly like that. I mean, you do get downtime, but it really does matter how much work you put into it to see results. I actually took an LSAT course, which was really helpful. I forget what it's called. I'll think about it and I'll let you guys know if I remember. It was really helpful. It helped me kind of gauge what I was getting myself into. I used Khan Academy, which is a free online LSAT. Yeah, Karlena knows. It's great. It sets it up perfectly for you, and it helps you do practice tests, and kind of it singles out sections that you're particularly good at or you're not so good at, and it'll help you practice the sections that you're not good at. Writing the LSAT was stressful, which I think writing any kind of standardized test is stressful. But it's not as bad as people make it out to be. It's, you get breaks. We got to eat a snack. It wasn't as bad as people say, but yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it. It was stressful, but it was definitely worth it. And now I don't ever have to look at it ever again.
So I took a LSAT class as well. I was working full time at the time, so I did it over I believe like a 5 to 6 month period. Registered twice. The first time I didn't have accommodations because I didn't know if I would be able to have them. And then the second time I registered for accommodations. And I really recommend, if anyone's watching this that has accommodations from high school and into university, please do go through the process to get your accommodations. It makes a huge difference. You shouldn't be thinking that you're cheating the system. You shouldn't be thinking that your doctors or your medical professionals are doing you a favor. You shouldn't feel the need to tell anyone as well. It's completely a private matter. So I did it while working full time and volunteering and other things. I did it commuting as well. So I really do say it's possible. I really recommend to people, if you can't take off the time to do it, give yourself compassion while doing it, and give yourself the space and patience to not rush it. Rushing is the worst thing you'll see in classes. You'll hear people tell you don't rush it. You need to give yourself the time to learn the speed, to learn the pace, and really give yourself the breathing room to learn those important skills that will take time to learn. And that's like what I did, and that's what worked for me. But it definitely was a strenuous process. If you say, like, I know people that never took classes and, did it and crushed it. But I was just one of those folks that needed a class. And yeah. And I also recommend LSAT for Dummies for folks that are thinking of either doing a US or Canadian US idea and they need something to like read. Highly recommend the book. It sounds like you would not need it, but I thought it really did a great job. And the professors on the book are really accoladed and really from great universities. So yeah.
Yeah, so similar to Alex and Anthony, I also took one of the classes. If I'm being completely honest, I think the class was helpful. And, it was nice because it was a small class of like 4 people, and then the other 3 decided law school wasn't for them. So it ended up being one-on-one. But what was it, Khan Academy that Alex mentioned? It's free. It's a free resource. It's funded by LSAC. So I found, honestly, that source was almost just as useful as the course I took. So if there's any kind of financial barrier, like, don't feel like you have to take a class. There are resources out there that are much more affordable or free. And I found Khan Academy was fantastic. From my perspective, the LSAT was the biggest barrier to entry for me for law school. I had pretty good grades, great extracurriculars, but I really struggled with the LSAT. The first time I took it, got in the mid 40s and managed to work my way up to 157, which is okay. And I managed to get into a few law schools with it. So don't stress too hard about, the high 60s. you still have options, you know, even if you are getting more mid scores around the mid 50s to high 50s. So definitely aim towards that as well. And honestly, just give yourself a break. Most legal experts, legal practitioners, legal educators are agreeing now that the LSAT isn't really a good measure of whether you'll be a good lawyer or not. And for that reason, a lot of law schools in the United States are starting to phase it out. If you're in high school right now or early university, it's quite possible that by the time you get to the point where you'd consider writing an LSAT, a lot of Canadian law schools might not even require it anymore. So just keep that in mind if it is something that's really stressing you out like it was for me. You know, you don't need to get that high 60 score, and really just focus on kind of rounding out your extracurriculars if that's kind of one of your biggest concerns.
Thinking back to the LSAT is very traumatizing. It was an interesting time. I honestly studied for probably a year and a half on and off. I started off with taking an LSAT course in the summer of like, I think I was in my third year of university. I started pretty early. So if you know you want to go to law school, I'd recommend starting early if you want to go right after you're done your undergrad. But I really struggled with the LSAT. It was difficult in the beginning, but I realized that the LSAT isn't like, what you get when you start is not what you'll continue to get, like the score you'll continue to get. It's really a skill that you just continue to work on and you build on and you just become better at it. So you're not stuck where you start. So don't let that discourage you at all. But I started off with taking a course. It was Princeton Review was the one that I took. And it was helpful. Like it helped teach me the basics. I find that I'm not really good at self-studying because I couldn't discipline myself. So if you're in that same boat, then I definitely recommend taking a course. But I also really liked Khan Academy. That was, I know we've mentioned that before too. That was a really good resource as well because it picked up on where your weaknesses were with the test and it would make you practice them over and over and over again. So I really liked Khan Academy as well, and the Power Score books. I've written the LSAT a few times, and I remember the Power Score books also really helped me like realize like why I couldn't understand certain questions, especially with logical reasoning. I noticed I was struggling a bit. So I highly recommend those resources if you are looking to write the LSAT. And in terms of studying, it's a sacrifice. Like you don't really get to see your friends as much. It's hard. Like you are stuck inside studying basically 9 to 5 and then going over your test again and seeing where you made errors and correcting them and learning. So don't let it discourage you. It's all worth it in the end. It's just a lot of hard work, but it will pay off. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the advice. And as someone who's studying for it right now and is writing it in August, I really appreciate the advice, just even personally. So once you've completed your LSAT and fingers crossed you have that really good score, now you're ready to apply for law school. Could you maybe instruct us on, I guess, the documents that you guys had, some of the requirements, and what the application process was like for each of you?
Okay, give me a second. The application process. So in terms of documents, help me out, guys. We had to submit a CV. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, a CV. We didn't need a resume. I actually don't remember what documents we needed.
You had to submit a resume. It was like you had to input it into OUAC. It was all through OUAC, and then you.
It was more of a CV though. Like we had to include our education on it as well and stuff, which is more of a CV than a resume. I think that was the only document we needed though, right?
I think it was, yeah, it was like that. You needed like your personal statements for each school. You needed references.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like all
so
these
okay
documents.
Got it. Yeah. Right. So in terms of actual documents you have to upload, a CV would be the only one. But on OUAC, it does require a personal statement from each university. And it's different for each university. I remember applying to Windsor and they had a set of questions they wanted me to answer. Ryerson had, they just wanted me to submit just a personal statement, and then they wanted to discuss with me, they wanted me to discuss my comfort levels with technology. And then Ryerson also gave us a situational question, which was kind of interesting. With Ottawa, it was just an 8,000 character personal statement. So it does vary between each law school, but generally it's a personal statement. You have to talk about who you are, why you want to go to that law school, and what you can bring to the table. And then there is what's the thing where you have to input all your experiences? What's that called?
Your CV, resume, kind of. I don't know what
no,
they call it.
No, it's called something else.
Alex is like, I remember it for like specifically. It has a name.
Name.
I don't remember the name, but I remember you
Your
had to input your job
extracurriculars.
history.
Yeah.
You put
Yeah.
extracurriculars, jobs, volunteering. You had to do your references. And then from references, you started adding as well your personal statements. You could also add additional documents. So let's say you got low classes and you wanted to have a defense. You can submit defenses for certain universities. Additionally, on that, certain universities request different types of references. So some leave it up to you, others will give you 2 to 3. Some are professional and academic, others are just professional, others, they leave it up to you of your own free choice. If you start applying out of province, so if this case is for a larger Canadian audience, you won't have OUAC, you'll have individualized application processes. So e.g., if you're applying to Calgary, Calgary will have its own portal. You'll have to upload all your documents specifically to Calgary. Additionally, once you make your LSAT account can be used into an LSAC when you pay for your fees to then apply to American schools.
Your sketch. That's what it's called. That took me so long. Your sketch. Sorry, Anthony, continue. You can speak to it if you want.
The sketch is like all your jobs, correct? Yes.
Yeah, all your extracurriculars, everything that you've done since high school is your sketch. Yeah, and I think the limit, you get a limit of how many you can add. The limit's like 30. You do not have to put 30 in. Don't feel pressured to put 30. I think I had like 15, maybe 15 at the most. I don't know. It's more about quality than quantity. Like, don't put in that you bake a cake occasionally on a Saturday. Like, don't put that stuff in. I was gonna put in like, oh, I won a fishing tournament with my grandpa when I was 10. One of the guidance counselors was like, yeah, don't. Like, they don't want to see that. They want to see things that are actually relevant that have kind of created who you are. So yeah, that's the sketch. Okay, continue.
I was just going to mention for folks that are thinking about applying, I would recommend as well, if you're in financial need or unique circumstances, please email the directors of the school that are running the recruitment to ask questions. The only way you're going to clarify myths are by emailing the directors or recruitment advisors. It is scary. You will probably hesitate if you should. Read over the email like 3 or 4 times, send in 4 questions, send in 5, whatever it may be, make it as organized as possible, but send in all the questions you have and they'll promptly respond to you. And they will definitely help you clear up anything that you may need. I highly recommend when you're submitting your personal statements to have friends read over it that you care about and that care about for you genuinely. I recommend using a Google Doc if you haven't used a Google Doc before, using suggesting and editing, and all those things can really help because then you have control of the edits, you're controlling what you're writing, and it's very important that it's legitimately yours. Additionally, if you're applying to the States, they will ask for all of your criminal records. They will ask a very detailed amount of questions about proving your character as well as your validity of a person. So there's character questions that they include in the US, and most schools have the option to waive the fees. In the United States, it's really expensive after you've started applying to each school. So in Canada, I believe in Ontario, I should speak, you have the ability to apply to 3. It's a lot more of a lower cost. And then every school on top of that is an additional fee. I recommend ahead of time to do as much as possible to make it as streamlined as possible. So if you're applying to American schools, include the fact that you'll pay the extra money to have everything through LSAC. It'll really help and save your time and save you the extra effort and cost. So yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah, totally. And I think just to add on to that as well, like most undergrad or universities in general have like career services, and most career services type programs. I don't know if all schools have that as their name, but they all have them. They will help proofread your personal statements. They'll go over your application with you. They have people who are trained to help students who are applying to professional schools like law school or med school to work on their applications. So definitely use those resources. They're very helpful as well. One other thing to note is with Lincoln Alexander School of Law, if you're applying with us, there's a little mini interview kind of thing, except it's just, they don't properly interview you. They ask you questions and you're given 30 seconds to answer them, or a minute. And it's really stressful because you feel like you don't have enough time to say the answer you want to say. So be prepared if you're applying to Lincoln Alexander School of Law as well, because that's one other aspect. But yeah, those are kind of the main components of applying to law school. It's definitely costly if you're applying to a lot of different schools. Not all schools, particularly in other provinces, accept references. Some of them just ask for a personal statement and for your CV. So just make sure that you're very well aware of all the deadlines and all the different expectations for each individual school.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else to like add to that. I guess you guys like went over most of it and like what else there is. Like I don't even know what else I guess to say, but I guess like get ahead on the applications, like start early. I know I didn't start as early as I should have the first time I applied. I did my reference letters pretty like last minute, so if you can get ahead, definitely get ahead on it, and make sure you look over your personal statement many times. It is your like writing sample, and you don't want to make like, you don't want any errors to be in there. It has to be like quite perfect when you send it off. So just make sure you go over it many times. And each school, I noticed, I only applied in Ontario, but each school had different like character counts. So you kind of have to make different personal statements. You can have like generic sentences or paragraphs that you have in each one, but you kind of do have to cater it to each school. Research the school and include that in your application. Like write about why you want to go to that school and why you think you'd be a good fit for that school. Even now that when we're applying for law firm jobs right now, it's the same thing. It's like we need to research the firms we're applying to and see if we fit and why we would fit in. So yeah, definitely do your research, and yeah, good luck to anyone who's doing their applications.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all very much for that. It's definitely something that I don't think we do a lot of, especially as pre-law students, because we're so rushed, maybe just with undergrad or maybe just with COVID going on, just, you know, the ability to copy paste things, it's not going to work. So that's good advice. I really appreciate it. So I guess I'll bet the pandemic kind of thrown a little bit of a wrench in the way that schooling's even presented, or the way that class goes on right now. Like this has become the norm. What were some of the misconceptions, I guess, that you all had going in, like prior to law school, then actually going in and taking some classes in law school? Like I know things are a little bit different right now, but if anyone could attest to maybe just a little bit of that, that would be super helpful.
Misconceptions. So while I suffered from the largest case of imposter syndrome, I really did. If anybody doesn't know what imposter syndrome is, it's basically you feel like you don't belong there. I just felt like I didn't belong there. I felt like I was going to be the only one who had no idea what was going on, who came from an undergrad that gave me nothing towards law school. I thought everybody was going to come in knowing what a case summary was. You know, I didn't know anything, and I thought I was going to be a lone wolf, like I really did. That's not true. Everybody's in the same boat as you. As much as you don't want to believe it, it's true. I met everybody on this panel on one of the very first orientation events, and we all bonded over the fact that we all have no idea what's going on. Like we had no idea what we were doing. And that's how we became friends. And that's how everybody else treats it too. We learn together. It's a process, and it takes practice. You have to get good at being a law student. I always say that you have to be good at being a law student, and that takes practice, because it's a whole new way of thinking. So yeah, that was a misconception of mine, thinking I was going to be the only one who didn't know anything, but it turns out nobody knows anything. So we're all in the same boat.
Biggest misconception, I think I would have to say is that, oh, this is tough. I think you're gonna have to give yourself room to learn, to be a student, like a specific type of student, and write in a specific type of way. Second, the Socratic method is dying out. So I would have to say, be prepared for whatever your teachers or professors are going to be coming up with, because each of them might have different methods of fulfilling that like Socratic method teaching. And then my third, I think my biggest misconception was the stress. It is, I would have to say it's a full-time job and then some. I would recommend folks, if you have to work part-time, you got to do what you got to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But it definitely, for myself included, just considering everything else, it was the first year of school that I didn't work like either part-time in a higher education or in high school. And so give yourself the time to build the habits and routines that you're going to need to succeed, because it is a new environment, just like Alex said, and you're going to need to practice it. So yeah, give yourself the breathing room before taking on the jobs potentially.
Yeah, I agree what everyone has said so far. Imposter syndrome is very big. I went into law school with an undergrad that was heavy in law, and I still had no idea what was going on. And really, the first semester, especially, is very difficult because you kind of feel like you don't know anything. Everything's going 100 miles a minute, and you're like, is this even the right place for me? And I think that was something that all of us have experienced. Um, by second semester, you start getting more accustomed to it. You kind of get your pace. But really, the biggest thing for me was it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be and a lot more work. I was a very hard worker in undergrad. I knew I had to be so I could get the grades to go to law school. And I kind of hoped that once I got to law school, I could slow down my pace a little bit. But it just ramps up even more. So, I mean, I don't want to push anyone away from law, but if you're not sure if law is what you want to go into, be ready for a grind when you get here. If you're kind of on the rocks about it or on the wall, then maybe law isn't the right place for you, because it really is difficult. And with another looking down the barrel of another 2 more years, it's kind of exhausting too. So that's just being completely honest. I love law. I've always loved law. I find it very fascinating. So I find, even though it's a lot of work and it's very stressful, I find it very rewarding and worthwhile. But I know not everyone feels that way. So that's kind of the biggest shock for me, was really truly how hard and how much work it was.
So the biggest misconception, similarly, I also had like the whole like imposter syndrome thing where I was like, I don't know, like I don't feel like I belong here. It was like it kind of like comes throughout the semester. Like there's certain points where it's worse than others. But I think like the biggest misconception that I had was that I wouldn't like that once I'm in law school, like you're kind of set. You're really not, because you work so hard in high school to get into university. You work so hard in university to get the grades to get into law school. And then you think when you're in law school, you're just done and you'll get a job after. But it is so hard to get one of the top like Bay Street full service firm jobs. If you want to work at a large law firm, they are looking for the like top 20% students, and law schools work on a B curve. So all students have to be curved down to a B. Only the top 20% will get A's and the bottom 20% get curved to a C. So this whole B curve thing just really threw me off. So it is discouraging, because like it's like no matter how hard you try, you still just end up getting curved. So I found that to be really discouraging. And that was, I think, the biggest like eye-opening thing about law school, is that you think you're trying hard, you got to try a little bit harder, because if you want to work at these big law firms, they do look at like other grades too, but you have to work hard. Like you're not done working. The work is just beginning now. So that was definitely one of them. The other misconception that I'm thinking of was that I didn't have to read as much. I was like, oh, I took psych. I did a lot of reading in undergrad. Like there's not going to be that much reading. There was like 500 pages of reading a week. And it's basically like unmanageable if you're doing it on your own. And luckily I had Anthony and Karlena. We were in a study group together for all of last year. So it made the reading load a lot lighter and a lot better. So I highly recommend study groups if you're going into law school.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all very much for that. And I think it's something that, obviously, especially the last part that Michelle brought up, the reading part. That was one of the things I heard right away from a lot of my profs was if you think the reading's bad in undergrad, you should see it in law school because it's just going up from here. So I'm kind of getting to the end of my questions here. But I guess furthering to my last question there, I know things have been, like I said, again, things are totally different the way that school is being presented, the way that we're even communicating nowadays. Could you maybe take us through a day in the life of a law student? Like, what does a regular day kind of look like? I know right now it's totally different, but if there's any way you could shed some light on what a typical a typical day as a law student would be, that would be super helpful.
This is so funny. I I don't want to talk about like a typical day in my life because people are gonna be like, you don't do anything. But we were in a pandemic and it was really hard. Okay, I'm just gonna get into it. So I don't know, we get up. Our schedules are kind of vary. Our classes usually start at 9. Sometimes they start a little earlier. I had one 8 a.m. class this semester, which was brutal, but usually they start at 9. Sometimes they start a little bit later. So you get up, have breakfast, make sure you eat in the morning. It's crucial. Even if it's just some cereal, gotta eat. With online school, we were completely online. It's really hard not to just roll out of bed and sit in your desk and open your laptop with your blanket over you. It's really tough not to do that, but trying to keep up that sense of normalcy throughout the day is what kind of kept me going. So I did my best to get dressed. I really did. I really tried. I tried to put on makeup sometimes before class. It just made me feel more alive. And then you open your laptop, you go to class. You have lunch. This is so boring. You have lunch. Sometimes we'll do readings in between classes, but you don't usually have enough time to do that. So usually that will happen in the evening. Gyms weren't open, so I couldn't go to the gym. When the mall was open, sometimes I'd take a trip to the Eaton Center. Sometimes the group of us would go out for a dinner occasionally when patios were open. You definitely have free time, you do, throughout the day. You just have to manage your time properly. And then the evenings usually consist of, like I said, readings. I would try and take some downtime every evening too before bed, so I didn't go to bed feeling overwhelmed. Yeah, really boring. I don't know. I hope you guys have better days than I do. It was so boring.
So I'm going to toss in the chat a really helpful link of a fellow student we have that did a video, a day in the life of a law student in Toronto. So fellow classmate Rita, she did a really great YouTube video of what she does. So my typical day in the morning, especially with our section, our classes were split into sections. We had always early morning classes. So the morning usually started off the same, make my bed, get my coffee as fast as I can, have my cereal, and then I'm going to be starting class right away. I would say get in the habit of trying to build a proper sleep routine. And if you can't build the habit of doing a sleep routine, give yourself the understanding that you'll take a nap after class or that you'll do something in between to replace that sleep time to know because you work late into the night and that's when you get your best work done. Work to what your clock is, and my clock isn't the same as everybody else's. So get class done, probably have a fuller lunch, and then start with whatever meetings are during the day, and then most likely start potentially readings before dinner or prepping a to-do list for the evening. I have a partner, so we would usually play or Zoom together for a little bit. I might Zoom with the people you see on this call for a little bit, have later meetings in the day, probably have a second class in the evening or a tutorial in the evening. And then I would try to go for potentially a walk during the day, depending on the day, go grocery shopping. And then usually your grocery store will have like a Tuesday to Thursday kind of thing that is 10% off, highly for students. Highly recommend to be financially conscious, be it if you're living with your parents still, or if you're on your own, or if you're in any other kind of circumstance, try to cut those needs, because you're going to be constantly bombarded by different things. And so it's really important to have food at home, so that way you can try to maintain some semi-balance of a healthy lifestyle. And then my evenings would be like readings. My afternoon might be readings as well. Try to change your location for reading. And yeah, I guess that's kind of my day. Highly recommend the video. And I really forgot to walk sometimes. I really recommend that if you're buying a desk chair, don't buy synthetic material when you're sitting on it. Buy a fabric that is absorbent, or a fabric that you can sit long time in. You know what? You guys are laughing at me, but I'm being 100% serious. It'll make a huge difference. And all the office chairs downtown are not going to be leather anymore. They are a soft cushion. They're usually either cotton or a cotton poly mix. Yeah, just putting it out there for folks. You're going to be sitting for hours on end. And if
I actually didn't know that. I actually didn't know that.
So I had a very long conversation with an ergonomic person recently from my summer job, and they gave me a very stern warning about synthetic chairs or not having material that's like breathable, and the importance of having that, both for men and women, and the differences of that and how it does for your biology. I'll pass it off to Carly.
It's good to know.
So Anthony, the pinnacle of health, gave a very great aspirational day in the life of a law student, very different from what I experienced. I'm really hopeful that we're back in person again, because the habits I ended up developing over the course of the 2 semesters weren't great and not great for studying. But it started off well. You know, I would get up, have breakfast, get dressed, even put on makeup and get ready for the day. But it's quickly devolved into me waking up maybe 3 minutes before class started, grabbing my laptop off my bedside table, and then opening it to my class while still in bed with my camera off, and kind of starting the day that way. And then maybe once I got to my second or third day class of the day, getting up and with my camera still off, walking to my kitchen and making myself food while in class. And then even once or twice, you know, when you really needed to, I even brought my laptop into the bathroom, like closed it, made sure my camera was off, and would even shower during class because they take attendance. So you have to be there. But don't recommend that. That's just the reality of the situation. And then, you know, later on in the day, I worked during the school year. So I worked part-time. And luckily I also worked from home. So oftentimes my day was spent, you know, going from class and then opening up my work email and then going back to class again, and kind of back and forth between 9 and 5. So usually between 9 and 5, I didn't really have any breaks. I just kind of worked, whether it was school or work, throughout the whole day, which is why I showered during class and made lunch during class. And then after work and school is done, I would normally try to go on a long walk. I agree with what everyone said. I'm not a runner, but I love walking. So I'd listen to a podcast, maybe even grab a coffee, and just get some exercise and use that time to kind of like relax a little bit. I'm a chronic procrastinator. So normally I found myself doing readings at like 2 in the morning. Also wouldn't recommend that, but that's just kind of the reality of the situation, especially if you're working while you're doing school. And then I would also try to get a lot of my work done over the weekend. Sometimes we would work via Zoom or even get together with each other. My partner's also in law school, so we would try to get together on the weekend and do readings and stuff like that together. But yeah, so sometimes, you know, the life of a law student is a little messy. Obviously, I won't be able to get away with some of those bad habits if we're back in person again in the fall, but I don't even know how I'm going to be back in person in the fall now that I've developed these habits, but it'll be so nice to be able to see everybody in person and feel like a real human again. So yeah, sometimes it's really aspirational. Sometimes it's waking up 5 minutes before class and watching your first class from your bed. So
a day in the life of a law student. It's so different, I think, when it was in person, because first semester we did have an in-person class, which was really nice. So like it was a whole different process than being at home. But being at home, it like in the beginning, I would also wake up early and try to have breakfast and get ready and go to class and do my makeup. But that didn't last very long. And then it would soon be waking up 10 minutes before class, rushing to get my coffee and making sure my coffee was ready before class started. And if not, I would rush downstairs with my laptop and my camera on and be making my coffee in class. So that was my mornings. We had class from 9 to 5. Like my schedule was like that. There were breaks in the day, but it was usually from 9 to 5. Some days it was like 11 to 5. And I would try to like do readings in between class or work on assignments, but I was also involved in a lot of extracurriculars. So I had lots of meetings throughout the day, lots of email exchanges. The school would ask me to do like random things. So I would just be quite busy answering emails in between classes, and I try to do work, but it was quite difficult too. It's a lot of time management. I highly recommend getting an agenda. Like that probably saved my life. And also just like making to-do lists throughout the day and being like, this is what I want to do today, and this is the task I want to do tomorrow. So it was a lot of organization. And then in the evenings, I would just make dinner, and mainly I'd do readings at night. And I think my problem is when I start to get into something, I will do it for a very long time and I can't stop doing it. So I'd sit there for like 5, 6, 7 hours and just end up doing my readings or my assignments until really like early hours in the morning. You don't get much sleep as a law student, I learned. So I was quite sleep deprived for the last year and I was really burnt out, hence why I'm not working this summer. I think I needed a break. So definitely take care of yourself and take care of your mental health. I feel like that's a huge thing that is not talked about enough when you're a law student. It can be very exhausting doing all the work and everything and just being cold called in class sometimes when you didn't have time to do the readings. So definitely take care of yourself and take care of your mental health. It's a difficult process.
Thank you guys very much for the insight. And I think it's, like you said, Michelle, it's something that we don't really talk about, people's mental health. So, and it's something that obviously everyone's starting to bring up a little bit more and more, and it's something that we should be taking more care of. So that's, I think, is a very important part as well. So I'm kind of getting to the end here. So pardon my Florida accent, y'all are part of some amazing clubs and organizations and other extracurriculars despite your early tenure at law school. So could each of you kind of provide a little bit more information about, like, because you're all part of certain clubs, organizations, extracurriculars. Could you each provide some information about your position, your club, and just other general information, just maybe about the advocacy or the goal of your club that you're a part of? This is kind of your guys' time to shine. So.
Well, Karlena and I are both on the Environmental Law Club. I'll speak for all of us and I'll say that it was really hard, especially for Ryerson students, because we're the first group, which means we had to create all of the clubs. That nothing existed before us. So we all have like co-founders in our bios because we all made up these clubs because we didn't have them. Karlena is the president. I'm vice president social of the Environmental Law Club. So I'll let Karlena speak a little bit more about our values and what we strive to do for the club. But yeah, it was great getting involved and being part of initiatives that we're each passionate about. Karlena and I both, we don't necessarily want to go into environmental law. We might, but we don't know. And you don't have to be on a club that necessarily relates to the area of law that you're interested in. You can just be on a club if you want. So I'm just generally passionate about the environment, same with Karlena. And we wanted to start a club that was inviting to all students, whether they wanted to go into environmental law or not. It's more based on sustainability, being realistic and also being sustainable as a student living in Toronto. So that was something that was kind of in our minds when we wanted to create the club. And we're hoping that more students will want to join next year. But it's just funny because all of our clubs have like, our club has 3 members. Like there's no one here. So we don't have anybody that wants to join the club. Michelle will speak a little bit more about hers. Her club has more members than ours because it's bigger and more interesting. But yeah, it's been tough, but I've enjoyed every minute of being on the club, even though we haven't been able to do anything in person. So
so I founded with 5 other people the Outlaw Association at Lincoln Law. And it is essentially a group that focuses on reaching out to the community as well as to the broader national perspective on queer and queer law, as well as queer individuals that need access to the law. It's also about an affinity group to help representation of queer students and queer law students, working with queer associates, as well as two-spirited associates that are within the field, that are doing the work, that are breaking the ground for further advancements of, LGBTQIA two-spirited folks' needs, and the desire of being, seen and having spaces that continue to be seen. Additionally, I did a moot this year. So I did, not necessarily a moot, I shouldn't say that. I did a negotiation, I'm forgetting now. It was an interview competition for essentially when you intake a client to perfect that process. And it was 45 minutes. We competed against several other law schools in Canada, and Lincoln Law won this year. And then we competed internationally. And so I really recommend, if you are able to participate in your first year, to do so. It's a really important process. I understand that most law schools, you're not able to participate in your first year because it is a 6th shadow course. It occupies your entire life. Your significant others will definitely notice the absence of your presence just in general, and the mess that takes over your room, which is a hurricane. And so, yeah, those are the two things I did. If you're interested in Outlaw, I'd recommend to reach out to those folks at any province. There is Outlaw chapters across the country. They just held a conference with all the different chapters across every single law school, and it was really good. But I really recommend to reach out to those folks if you're interested, if you have questions, if you're concerned about certain schools and if they're able to support you. I would definitely reach out and seek those voices, because they are there, and challenge them, as well as participate in the conversation if you can.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Yeah, basically what Alex and Anthony said, we were kind of on our own with starting our clubs from the beginning. All of these clubs are really our heart and soul, because we had to create constitutions, we had to get people involved. Like, all of this were our own brainchilds, or things that we were passionate about that other law schools had. So I think all of these clubs are very close to our heart in a way that they might not be for students at other law schools. But just to speak a little bit more about the ELC, which is the Environmental Law Club that Alex and I were both on. So as she said, our conception of it wasn't necessarily just for students interested in environmental law. There's a lot of clubs, at most law schools, that are oriented towards people who want to go into those areas of law, and then they have panelists and stuff. But ours was more just to promote sustainability, promote equality in the environmental movement, and encourage, people interested in law to look at environmental law issues and also environmental policy, because obviously law and policy are very closely related to one another. So, don't be afraid to start clubs at your law school that aren't necessarily just law focused. They can be law adjacent and still, have an amazing impact on your community and your law school. And then in addition to the ELC, I was also involved in, Ryerson has something called pods, which are kind of like law clinics that other law schools have. But first year students could join, because we were the only students at Ryerson Law. So, so we had the opportunity to have hands-on experience in that way, in a way that many other first year students don't necessarily have. So I was working with the refugee and immigration law pod. So we were teamed up with refugee and immigration lawyers in Toronto, and we kind of just did some small research tasks and stuff. But what I found really interesting about it is that we got to learn a little bit more about what it looks like to be a lawyer in that field, and kind of what a role of a lawyer in that field would look like. So that was also very interesting. And I was super happy to be able to be involved in those as well. And I think that even once we get more Ryerson students and kind of have a full 3 cohorts, they're going to continue to have pods available for first year students. So if that's something that you're interested in, we had a number of them. The refugee law one was just one of the pods available. So if you're interested in jumping right in, then highly recommend Ryerson for that alone. So yeah, and off to Michelle.
So for me, like personally, I had someone very close to me be wrongfully incarcerated when I was in grade 11. I was in 11th grade, and since then, like I was always interested in innocence work. I always want to tell people who have been wrongfully convicted, and I got in touch with the director of Osgood's Innocence Project. His name is Alan Young, although he's retired now. So I ended up connecting with him. I told him how passionate I was, and he kind of mentored me. And eventually, when I got accepted to Ryerson, I wanted to start a chapter of Innocence at Ryerson, and I am currently founder and president of Innocence at Ryerson Law. And we have over 50, I believe, members right now. I think we're the largest student club from what I heard from our student body. So we have quite a lot of students. We have 7 executives, and we basically work to aid in the defense of those who have been wrongfully convicted and provide law students with meaningful opportunities to get involved with innocence work. It's a great club. Like we've had a lot of fun. We've had opportunities to work with Innocence Canada. So we had a pod as well where we were doing a pilot project with Innocence Canada. Yeah, so if you are interested in innocence work, like please reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find our social media. Also, we're on Instagram, LinkedIn as well. And on top of Innocence at Ryerson Law, I was also part of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council, which I'm still part of now. I don't know why I said it in past tense, but I'm still involved in that. And we just help with policy decisions relating to equity, diversity, and inclusion issues within the law school. And yeah, I believe that's everything that I've been involved in. But it's quite a lot. On top of the workload, I noticed it was a lot of stuff. So I might do a little bit less next year, but I really enjoyed extracurriculars. It's a great way to meet people, so highly recommend.
Yeah, I forgot that I'm also involved in a pod. So I put it in the chat, but like I'm also involved in a pod. I completely forgot. I think because we didn't get a chance to do a lot of work in it. There wasn't a lot of us that were involved in it, and we had just gotten it up and running right before the summer started. But we're going to be working with lawyers at Fogler Rubinoff, and it's essentially the same thing: access to justice in the field of health law. So that I just wanted to mention that because I completely forgot. Sorry, Landon.
No, it's all good. I was just going to add, everyone's Insta handle is in the pre-law shadowers in our posts for this session. So if anyone wants to follow Michelle, Alex, Karlena, or Anthony, feel free to follow them. I hope that's okay with you guys. I'm kind of just giving away your consent. Follow them and then hit them up if you have any questions about any of their amazing clubs that they're involved in, or if you have any questions for them. So I kind of just have a final question here. So as individuals who have, you have some incredible stories and incredible heads on your shoulders, and you're going to do amazing things in the future. Do you have any kind of final advice or wisdom or any kind of shout outs for the pre-law students that may be watching or in attendance today?
If I could say one thing, it would just be you are meant to be in law school. Don't think that you're not meant to be here because you don't have top grades, because you don't have enough experience, because you come from an undergrad that's not common. Don't feel that way. You're meant to be here. And people will tell you this in law school too. Your professors will tell you this. But always keep it in mind that you're on this path for a reason. You're meant to be here. The imposter syndrome is really real, but it will fade with time. Trust all of us when we say that it has faded over time. Once you get comfortable in the environment, it will fade. You're smart. You're going to be a great lawyer. Just stick through it. You got this. Unless you really hate it, then find something else. But if you love it and you're just struggling, that's okay. Everybody struggles. You're not always going to get A's in every single one of your classes. You'll probably come into law school with mostly A's, but everybody does, and everybody's competing for the same thing. But you are here for a reason. You're on your own path. Don't compare yourself to everybody who's around you. Just keep in mind that you're on your own path, and you're going to get to where you want to be.
I'll take that as my cue to transition, which I liked. You're doing a juggling act, and you're going to have glass balls and you're going to have plastic ones. Your glass ones, if they fall, are very hard to clean up and can hurt you when they drop, right? Your plastic ones, you can just reach on over and pick them up. Consider life like that, and consider certain things that you're balancing and juggling at different times as your glass ones and then your plastics. Be mindful and know which ones need to be protected and held close, and value those more than you do your plastic ones. You really need to know those priorities ahead of time, and they're not easy to always see. And sometimes you're going to drop a glass one and it will shatter, and you have to be ready for that. And so I think it's really important that you be mindful about that at this stage, and that you start to consider and prioritize certain things the same way you do and you're doing right now in your LSAT. When you're prioritizing questions, when you're skipping over certain questions, when you're deciding to do things differently, start to consider those skills, that skill particularly in life. And when you're starting to do your agenda, like Michelle really recommended, and I wanted to highlight that. So important to have. Yeah, there we go. I knew you were going to highlight it, and that's what I was hoping for. Really important to have. It'll change a lot. And if your agenda isn't paper and it's on Google Calendars or Apple or iCloud or Microsoft, whatever works. But start writing things down. Really keep those glass ones safe, because you don't want to have one of those drop in the middle of law school during your exams. And I wanted to mention this earlier. If you need accommodations, get your accommodations done on time. Make sure you know those dates. If you're taking medications or if you have unique circumstances, make sure that you're taking them regularly. They really make a difference to your law school career. You don't want to be taking a gap. You don't want to be having to take other absences. It's really tough to come back. And exactly like what Karlena mentioned, don't be afraid to ask for help. The school's there to help you. And if one person can't help you, then keep on climbing the ladder of who's their boss. And if their boss isn't going to help you, then who's the next person? And keep on emailing, because eventually someone's going to need to address the problem at hand. And if you need accommodations, reach out and try to do so. I think that's my advice. And I mentioned this earlier before the recording started, and Landon said that was really important, so I'll mention it again. Give yourself compassion. You're a person, you deserve compassion. So yeah, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. You cut yourself off there, Anthony, so I just wanted to finish your through line. But I would say be open-minded and open-hearted. You might not end up going into the type of law you think you want to go into going to law school. Be open-minded to the different types of law. I had no idea what administrative law was, for example. There's a lot of areas of law I didn't even know existed before I started law school. So be open-minded to different types of law that you might actually really end up being interested in. And that might not even be the law that the class that you end up getting a really good grade in. You can go into an area of law, that you didn't get a good grade in, that you didn't focus towards, because at the end of the day, just having a JD is sufficient to be able to practice most types of law in Canada. So even if you're orienting yourself in one direction, if you article and find out you like a different kind of law, like just, be open-minded to those opportunities, but also open-hearted with yourself. Like it's okay to change course and change your perspective on things. And I think the second piece of advice I would have, and it kind of fits in with being open-hearted, is knowing and understanding the law is a tremendous privilege. And make sure that as you're in law school and as you finish law school, that you use that privilege to help others. There's a lot of people who have law degrees and understandings in law that, don't necessarily extend that compassion onto others. And it's really important that you use your knowledge to make the world a better place. So, understand that as you're going through law school, take the opportunity to learn how you can use the law to help others and extend that, whether that's in your practice later on or in volunteer work that you do outside of your practice. So yeah, those are my 2 pieces of advice.
I'm just going to go off quickly what Karlena said, because I went into law school thinking that I was going to be a criminal defense lawyer. And then I had a mentorship program with the Crown's office, which was a very different experience, the opposite side. And through all these experiences, I also realized that maybe I don't even want to go into criminal law. So even though I was dead set on it going into law school, and then we took the criminal course and all these mentorship opportunities and getting involved with innocence work, I realized that maybe it isn't necessarily for me, and that's okay. It's okay to change your mind, and it's okay to try different things. So now I'm more very undecided. And anytime I go to different open houses, they're like, what kind of law do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm very open-minded right now. And that's okay. I think you'll eventually find out what you like as you take different courses. Like going into law school, I had no idea what tort law was. And then I took it and I was like, this is actually pretty interesting. And I actually liked it. So you still don't really know exactly what you want to do. Don't worry if your mind changes, be open to trying different opportunities and then deciding. I think that's the best way to go into law school, is open-minded. And then in terms of my advice for anybody who is thinking about law school is don't give up. You can do it. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. I know you have to make so many sacrifices to get there, but it is worth it in the end. And I think oftentimes now, being a law student, you forget how difficult it was just to get here. And honestly, when I got accepted to Ryerson, it was my first acceptance, I was crying. It was such a long process, and I cried so much just trying to get here. And I do cry a lot in law school too, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, don't give up. There were also many points in my life where I didn't even think law school was going to be an option for me. I struggled with my mental health a lot when I was in undergrad, and I remember in 3rd year it was so bad that I was on medication. I was in therapy. I was not doing well at all. My grades dropped, and I was like, I don't even think law school is an option for me anymore. But don't give up. No matter how hard it is, no matter what you're going through, you can do it. Don't give up. If it's something that you really want, just keep working towards it and you will achieve it, I promise. And if you need any help or you want to reach out to anyone, you can always reach out to me. I think all the panelists feel the same way. You can always talk to us. We're here for you, and we're here to support you.
Beautifully said. Thank you guys very much for all that. Do you guys have any final words or anything you want to say before I end this off?
Well, Michelle already said it, but we're all here for anybody who needs help, questions, anything like that. Even you, Landon, I know you said you're writing the LSAT. If you need anything from us, you can reach out at any time. Are you from Florida?
It's a long story, but partially from Florida. I've lived half my life there, yeah.
Are you applying? So you're not applying in Canada? Or
no, I'm applying in Canada. No, I'm not a dual citizen or anything like that. I'm Canadian.
Okay. So yeah, well, it doesn't matter. You can reach out to us regardless, but it's helpful that you're applying in Canada. You can reach out to us anytime. Anybody who needs any assistance, any help, we're all here. We've all been through it. We know the ins and outs of it. Please, let us help you. So yeah.
I just want to say good luck to everyone applying.
Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate the time that you guys took to be here. And on behalf of Pre-Law Shadowers and everyone, thank you guys very, very much. And all the best. Take care, and all the best with next year.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.